I'm Kat Oriel, a reporter here at Forbes. Today I'm joined by my colleague Jemima McEvoy. Jemima, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, I'm happy to be here.
Well, it's been a very hectic week in the news so far. Yesterday we found out that Fox News and Tucker Carlson decided to part ways, and that was very surprising because, as you wrote in your story, Tucker Carlson was one of their highest paid anchors, one of the highest paid anchors in the news television industry as a whole. How much was Tucker Carlson making at Fox each year, and how much was he bringing in for the company?
Yeah, so I spoke with somebody knowledgeable about the contract negotiations at Fox and learned that Tucker Carlson is making somewhere in the range of $15 million to $20 million a year annually at Fox News. Obviously, he has one of the most popular shows at the network, and he is definitely paid well for it. There's only a few other people in, the news, the TV news industry that are making more money than him, and that includes some of the anchors at Good Morning America and the Today Show. But other than that, he's definitely one of the highest paid people in the industry. So making a significant chunk of money there.
Yeah, that is a very significant amount of money. Do you know how his net worth stacks up?
Yeah, so it's difficult because we started looking into this recently, but obviously he's been raking in a good amount of money from Fox News. He's been, anchoring his primetime show since 2017. And then outside of that, we were able to identify a few properties that he owns, one home in Maine, and then one home in Florida that he kind of bought two neighboring plots over the past few years and combined them together into this one big property. So he has millions of dollars worth of property in his portfolio. And then finally, he co-founded the Daily Caller with his college roommate and sold his stake within the past few years. We don't know how much he sold it for. That's not been made public. And, so far I haven't been able to track down that number. But he definitely has a significant net worth. I don't have an exact number on it yet, but considering the fact that he's making, probably 20 million a year at Fox News, I think we can assume that he's pretty well off.
Wow, well, even though he was making that much money while he was still at Fox, do you know what the financial implications of his exit might mean for him? Do you know the terms of his existing contract, and does Fox News still owe Tucker Carlson a single penny?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's kind of what everybody is asking right now. Based on what I was able to learn about how these contracts usually go at Fox, there are a few different scenarios, and it depends on the reason that Tucker left the network. So if he was fired for cause, like there's a reason that the network fired him, let him go, then the network doesn't have to pay him a single cent more from his last show, which was last Friday. But if it was an amicable split, then he would be paid through the remainder of his contract at Fox. But the catch is that he wouldn't be able to work. Like, he couldn't go to another network or Newsmax or whatever and step into a new job because he'd still be technically under the contract. There's a third scenario, which is that Tucker Carlson's lawyer, he's hired a pretty hotshot, well-respected entertainment lawyer to represent him, could negotiate a lump sum from Fox, and then in return, Tucker could be freed up to work again. So that's kind of the in-between scenario. Right now, nobody knows if he's been fired for cause, if he's been, they decided to part ways, but the big and important context of all of this is obviously the Dominion voting machines case, which Fox just settled with Dominion for nearly $800 million, and that case was obviously around the election fraud claims that were peddled by Fox News anchors and executives, and then the case also revealed documents and indications that behind the scenes, the people that were saying these things on TV didn't even necessarily believe what they were saying. So there's been a lot of upheaval at the network. They let go of another one of their controversial hosts, Dan Bongino, recently. So obviously people are connecting that case with Tucker Carlson's exit. And then in terms of how much longer he has left in his contract, that's also something that people are scrambling to find out, and I don't know. But what I do know is that typically big hosts at the network renegotiate their contract around the time of the election. So Tucker probably renegotiated a new contract around the 2020 election. These contracts typically last 3 to 4 years, so it could be expiring soon in all likelihood. And then Vanity Fair reported that he was recently in the midst of, negotiating a new contract that would last through 2029. So it seems like his contract is probably coming up and expiring soon. So I guess we'll see what happens. I'm sure more will be revealed in the coming days/weeks.
In any of those scenarios, do you think that there's a chance that he could have a lawsuit against Fox, not just for the lump sum of how much his contract was worth, but maybe for damages at all?
It's hard to predict that, but what I can say is based on, his quick lawyering up and who his lawyer is, it seems like he's ready to come in and fight. So I'm not sure, I can't say if there will be a lawsuit in response, but it definitely seems like there's going to be some negotiation, and I'm sure there's some heated conversations happening behind the scenes already. And, Tucker Carlson is in an interesting position where he has a massive amount of leverage in the industry. And that's, one of the reasons that he's been able to get, a $20 million a year contract, which is pretty huge. But now his name has been tarnished to an extent. But what will be interesting to see is whether his lawyers will be able to help move him on to, or free him up to move him on to another place. So it's going to be we'll just have to wait and see, I guess, what the response is from Tucker's team. I'm sure they're not going to take it sitting down.
Now, on the other hand, what does all of this mean for Fox? After Tucker Carlson's exit was announced yesterday, their market value completely tanked. So do you think that Carlson's exit combined with the Dominion lawsuit could have really big financial repercussions for Fox? Or do you think they'll be able to rebound? And actually, the exit might be a good thing in the long run.
The insider that I spoke with, mentioned obviously Fox now needs to fork over almost $800 million to Dominion, and that's cash they need to produce. So, firing or, parting ways, we don't know if he was fired, but parting ways with Tucker Carlson, that saves $20 million a year off of their, balance sheet there. So, there's suspicion that that's a move that is, obviously related to helping fund that deficit they now have. But in terms of the future of the network, I mean, they still have a lot of high profile anchors. They're filling the spot with a roster of rotating folks from the network. But he is such a huge part of, the Fox brand. His show was the second, top rated cable show last year out of everything. So it's obviously a very significant decision, regardless of who made it, and who knows what's going to happen with Fox, but they definitely have big shoes to fill. Whether you like Tucker Carlson or not, he certainly pulled in the numbers for the network, and they're going to have to figure out a way to make it up.
So what do you think this means for Tucker Carlson? What's next for him career-wise, or is it just too early to tell?
So it's a good question. I mean, we learned that Tucker Carlson, Fox paid to install studios in both of his homes, his home in Maine and his home in Florida. He never actually, or he infrequently actually went into the studio to film his show. So I mean, he has studios in his home ready to go if he wants to produce something himself. And I guess it depends on how long he's tied to Fox. If he's still in the contract, then he may be having to sit pretty for a little while before he can do anything else. But I'm sure there are some networks that would, Newsmax, for example, that would fork out a hefty sum to bring him in and and get his, audience with them, because I think a lot of them will probably follow to wherever he goes next. So I don't think he's gonna struggle to find people that want to have him, but it's definitely going to be difficult to get the same platform that he had at Fox News. So I mean, what's next? Who knows? Maybe he'll strike out on his own. Maybe he'll go somewhere else. Those are probably the two main options there.
Jemima, thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course, thank you for having me.